Happy Tuesday, everybody. Today is April 13th, 2021, and today's guest is with Illinois native turned Nebraskan, Clay Thurman. Welcome to the Fall Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Blasey, and today is episode 155. And like I said earlier, it is April 13th. And according to my birth certificate, it is the day that I was born 34 years ago. So thank you, everybody out there that's already sent me happy birthdays today. I really appreciate it. To me, it's just another day. It's a work day today. So that's all I'm going to say about it, and we're going to get on with this episode. Today's episode, just in quick, like I said, Clay Thurman comes on, really good dude. He grew up in Illinois, and he had to move to Nebraska for work. So we get into the transition of that, how he grew up and how he hunted in Illinois, and then how he transitions to Nebraska, being a big buck guy and hunting one of the OG big buck states, Illinois, and then going to Nebraska and kind of getting, from what I kind of gathered, a kick in the pants in the way, like not as, easy, I guess you could say. I think Clay had to work a little more at it, and I think he's definitely did really well. I mean, he's really took on the mule deer game. He's, a big mule deer hunter now, so it's really cool to see that transition and everything he did. So with that being said, I do have a housekeeping thing I want to tell you guys. At iamhumanimal.com, go over there and check it out, because our new, I don't want to call it a website, it just happens to live on the World Wide Web, but it's our content hub. Go over to iamhumanimal.com. It is live. We've been working on this site for 2 years now, and it is unbelievable. It's not your prototypical website. You just have to go look at it. There is tons of different stuff in there, and I'm actually going to drop a podcast this week talking about the ins and outs of this site and what you can find on this. But you just go and play around with it. It's truly an experience. There's just a different way that we're trying to tell, I guess not different way we're trying to tell stories, but a way you guys can consume it differently. There is tons of different stuff on here. I'd literally be here for 30 minutes trying to explain everything. So I would just want you guys to go play with it. And then I'm going to drop another podcast this week explaining a little more about it with Casey, Cody, and Keegan. So go check it out, iamhumanimal.com. Let me know how you guys, or let me know what you guys think of it, I guess. DM me, do whatever. Tell me it sucks or tell me it's great. I think it's really badass, to be honest with you. So go check it out. And I think that's the last thing I had to say. I don't know if I have anything else in my notes. I do not have any more. Can't talk today. I do not have any more in my notes. So I've got people calling me right now. I'm going to get off this interview, or I'm going to get off this intro and get to this interview with Clay Thurman. All right, welcome back to the Fall Podcast, and today I have an Illinois boy turned Nebraskan. Can I say Nebraskan? Is that good? Do you guys say that out there?
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. You're a Nebraska guy now, a Cornhusker. But Clay Thurman, I appreciate you coming on the podcast, man, and welcome to the airwaves of the Fall Podcast. Thank you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I think this is the first one I've ever been on where I didn't say thanks for having me on the Jackie Bushman show. So you're already a first for that.
Perfect. I like being the first. I like that. Well, man, I appreciate you coming on here. You and I've been kind of bullshitting through social media here, the last couple weeks, and I know we've rescheduled twice for family things, and things come up, but I'm glad I got you wrangled down here. And today is going to be, I would say, a unique conversation in the fact that not that you're the only person that's ever done this, but I don't hear a lot of people of uprooting from Illinois, one of the OG's big buck states out there, to head to Nebraska or head west. So that intrigued me. So I'm ready to get into that for sure.
Yeah. I guess the reason that I moved is a pretty standard reason, and it didn't have to do with hunting. It had to do with a new job. So I came out here for work, and I had said to myself, hey, it's all right, because I'd always heard there's no trees in Nebraska, which that's pretty much correct, right? In comparison to Illinois, there are no trees in Nebraska, relatively. So I said to myself, hey, it's all right. I'll go out there. I'll become a pheasant hunter. That's going to be cool. I'll grab a pointer dog, and everything's going to be neat. And I got out here. I didn't see a pheasant for the first year. Like, they they bulldoze every single fence row they can and make more corn. That's what they do in Nebraska. Now and I'm in central southern Nebraska, so I'm right in the corn belt. But
okay,
I'm only about an hour north of Kansas, so I'm just starting south of me. You get 20 minutes south of me, you start to see some timber and a little bit of they call them rivers. We would call them creeks. But
yep. Well, how's the old saying go? If you find a tire in it, it's a crick, and if you find something else in it, it's a creek. Something like I can't remember the saying how it goes, but it's if you find a tire in it, it's a crick. I think maybe somebody will correct me on that, but no, that's funny. Now, I guess before we get too far into this, I mean, kind of explain your uproots and or your upbringing, basically in Illinois, like. That's where you were born and raised, right? And like, how long did you stay there until you moved to Nebraska?
So I'm 40 now, and I don't feel like I should be 40, right? It's really strange. Every time I realize that I'm 40, it's like, really? I didn't think that was a thing yet, but it is.
Yeah.
So I left Illinois in 2007. And I lived in a couple other places. I lived in Wisconsin, southern Wisconsin, for a little bit, long enough to kill a doe in Wisconsin. Felt good about that to mark off another state. But
there you go.
I left Illinois in 2011, and I've been here since. So, pretty much all my life. I only lived in Wisconsin for 2 years.
Okay. What took you down to Wisconsin then?
Or
up, I should say.
Yeah, right. I just graduated college, and my brother and I were building fence one day, and a train went by, and there was a conductor in the window, and they were going real slow, and he had his feet up on the desk, and he was like reading a newspaper or a comic book or something. And my brother was teasing me, and he said, "You'd be good at that," because I just graduated from college and didn't have a job.
Yeah.
And he was teasing me about being lazy, right? He said, "You'd be good at that." And I said, "That doesn't sound too bad." So I made a few calls, and next thing I know, I was working for a railroad.
Oh, okay. So you went up to Wisconsin to work for a railroad then?
Yep. And then I started working for another railroad, and worked in Fort Worth for a while, and back in Galesburg in Knox County, Illinois there, and then had the opportunity to move out west here. And it was a big change. It was not talking about work, but talking about deer hunting.
Mm-hmm.
It was a big change, and it was not a welcome change. It was pretty disheartening.
So what do you do for work out in Nebraska then?
I'm still a railroader.
Oh, you are? Okay. I gotcha.
Yeah.
So you're
still work for.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I still work for a railroad, and I guess some people call me a shirt tucker. I guess that's a pretty good way of saying what I do. I just generally manage what's happening in the southern part of the state of Nebraska.
Okay.
Sometimes into Colorado.
That's pretty cool though, because I'm so oblivious to what the railroad game is, other than you drive around and you see a railroad's going down the tracks, like, and they haul coal and they haul a whole bunch of other different things. I mean, that's pretty neat though. Like, that's cool to that's got to be a cool experience and a cool career and a cool job, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot of different things that come into that.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's great days and there's really challenging days, and if you like putting puzzles together and solving issues, that's the job for you, man. If you're a good firefighter, they really like that.
Yeah, I gotcha.
So I like it.
Well, cool, man. So I guess I want to get into you and I kind of on this pre-call we had before here, you talked about, obviously you're a diehard hunter. You live and breathe it just like me and a lot of people that are listening to this podcast. And you cut your teeth on whitetail growing up, obviously being from Illinois. Now you're into like the mule deer game, still whitetails as well. But like back in, 2006, 2007, you kind of told me that you wanted to up your game where you wanted to like target big deer. Now, when you say that, coming from Illinois, where I know there's big deer all over, to me, if you ask me, Illinois is the first Iowa. Illinois is, you got the Golden Triangle, Pike County, Brown County, like you got everything there. It's other than Wisconsin, it's really historic to me. Now, when you say
until it was ruined, yes, until it was ruined by the conservation, the current conservation, the politics of the state. Yes, it is a phenomenal place to grow big whitetail.
Now, when you say you wanted to up your ante to kill big deer, that intrigued me. So what did you mean by that? Like, and what was that moment where you're like, I want to target a certain size or age? What was that? Like, when did that hit you?
Okay, so when I got it was basically like the heyday of when Lee and Tiffany were first really blowing up.
Sure.
And trail cameras were becoming a thing, and I was looking for other things to do. But if I rewind just for a minute, I had grown up shotgun hunting and bow hunting, and I killed my first deer with a bow when I was 11. And most of the time when I was shooting, I was just hunting to hunt, and whatever was coming, of course I wanted to kill a big one, but I didn't have opportunities because I wasn't hunting big deer. I didn't know how to hunt big deer. And my dad has killed a few big ones, real big ones, but he wasn't a big deer hunter. If you know what I'm saying.
Yep.
And there's a difference between somebody that's targeting big deer and somebody who's a killer. And when I was growing up, if you on opening day of shotgun, if you hadn't seen anything special by 8:15, you better be killing something quick, because you had to go to school. If you had to get down and go to school if you didn't kill a deer. So I would stay I would shoot basically the first thing that would come through. And I did that all my life. And it wasn't, you would always want to see one, but it was like you were just hoping.
Yep.
And there's more to it than hope. And so there was a guy in the area who's killed lots of big deer. His name's Dave Impkin, and he's a taxidermist. I think he's retired from it now, but and he was my father's best friend growing up. And every time I would go hang out, how people just go hang out in a taxidermy shop and bother everybody, right? Every time I would go hang out for a little bit, he'd always say, hey, what are you doing? It's November. You need to get your butt in a tree. That's when the big ones die, right?
Yeah.
So I decided early on that year that we're going to do this, right? I've got some trail cameras now. We're going to look around and we're going to start after them. So I had decided that I wasn't going to mess up my spots, because I had always hunted hard the first 2 weeks of October, because deer season was open. Mm-hmm. There was no rhyme or reason to why I was doing what I was doing. I was seeing deer. I was killing deer. But that's not exactly if you don't have something earmarked, that's not an opportune time to hunt.
Right.
Right. If you're just randomly guessing. So I had said, I'm going to hunt absolutely hard as you can possibly hunt in November. I'm not touching the woods until November. And then I'm only going to shoot big deer. And I recovered my first big buck on November 2nd, because when I went on November 1st, I had a really slick 21-inch wide, 5.5-inch base, kind of a short tine 10 come in, and I smoked him. So that, I know that that's coincidence, but in that moment, what they said was correct, because my whole life I had been hunting when it was, quote, deer season. Well, that for me personally, that's not the time to hunt.
Mm-hmm.
The time to hunt deer is October. The time to hunt elk is September, right?
Yep.
There is a time when your best chance to have things happen without forcing them to happen. And that happened to be one of those times. And it worked out perfect. It kind of solidified that, yes, that's correct. I hadn't hardly ever hunted in November unless it was shotgun, because I'd already burnt myself out and wasn't seeing animals by then, and I'd moved on.
Right.
So, and there's a lot of talk and a lot of business out there about targeting specific deer. And I think our conversation is geared more towards people moving into killing big deer, not like that's a whole different level, you know, when you're trying to kill Curly or Snowball or whatever you named him. Like when you're chasing that giant deer, that's a different level than the conversation we're having right now.
Right, exactly.
And that's awesome, right? It's just a totally different thing. I mean, I know guys that will pack a great deer because they want to shoot that other deer. And he might score worse than the deer they just passed. It's just what they like to do, and that's fantastic. But what I'm more discussing is how your best opportunity to get into, you know, shooting big deer. At least that's what I had tested the waters, and it worked. You know, I think it was it was through 2000 to 2012. I'd killed what I had considered a big deer, certainly Pope and young deer, and some much bigger than that. And when I finally decided to make the change and started not shooting small deer, because there's a couple keys, right?
Yep.
if you're not in the stand anymore because you're down recovering that 90-inch forkhorn that you just shot, then you're not going to see the big deer. So not shooting little deer, hunting extremely hard in early November, the first 2 weeks, the first week specifically. And this isn't news to anyone. I'm not like laying down golden nuggets that nobody's ever heard before, but it truly is the key. If you're going to stop shooting, if you're going to want to kill big deer and you have fair ground to hunt, then that's when you do it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, targeting specific deer, that's done in October. A lot of guys target more specific deer in October or in December. Because those guys all get worried when November comes. You know, they're all peeing down their leg a little bit because their deer disappeared.
Yep, exactly. And you know, I'm going to take it a step further too, because basically you're identifying, and like you said, it's no secret. I mean, if you go, statistics show that the higher echelon of Pope and young or bigger deer are taken in the rut phases of the season. So, i.e. November, you know, latter of November, early November, all, you know, through that month. Now, I'm going to take it a little step further, and just for something that I know firsthand on one of my farms here in Michigan, not saying that November is not good on my farm, because you can for sure kill a big deer on that farm in that time frame. But October 20th through the 31st of October is the time that you're going to kill the biggest deer on the farm as long as you're in the stand. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just, I think it's also identifying that time frame that works, because I agree with you. You know, I've spent so many times burning yourself out the first week or 2 weeks of season when it's hotter than hell out. You know, you're sweating in a tree, you're still seeing deer, but you're not seeing the deer you want to, and then you're banging your head against the wall like, why am I not seeing deer? And then you might start making emotional decisions like, I need to move right now. Like, you know, you might be spinning your wheels a little bit more. And it's just identifying that time that to strike. And what you did is you stayed the heck out, and it paid off for you. And I'm sure that was a light bulb moment, wasn't it, when that first happened?
I could not believe it. I could not believe it. It was, and light bulbs to say the least. But I would call them adults. Adults tell you things your whole life, you know, when you're young. And most of the time, you don't believe them because your brains haven't grown in yet.
Right.
When it does happen, and you shake your head and you go, wow, that's exactly what they're talking about.
Yep. And you'll never forget that. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Oh yeah. That was, I don't want to go into a big story about that hunt, but that is my favorite hunt of all time. It's an interesting story. I told it on Where to Hunt a few months ago, and I hadn't told that story in a long time, and it just brings it on back.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. That's really cool. And I guess I want to go back a little bit to how you were talking about. You hunted October because it was hunting season. I mean, everybody out there listening, I shouldn't say everybody, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but even me, when you're not as maybe in tuned with hunting and you think you're doing it the way you need to be doing it and you think you're doing it at a high level, and you might be, but to go back to you saying I'm hunting because it's October, you know how many people I know, and I was victim to this a lot when I was in my earlier stages of hunting. You know how many people I know still to this day, they just hunt because it's October, which is totally fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but they just go hunting because it's hunting season. But they're good with that, and that's totally fine. But for you to identify that and really want to up your game is what's cool to me. And it's like guys like you and I that are ate up with it, that's how it hits us, I feel like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, for me, whitetail season doesn't start until November. I count down to the opening day of bow season in Nebraska because it's still September, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm talking whitetail, it's a totally different story. I mean, there's 240 days right now until the opening day of whitetail season for me, which is November 1st.
Okay.
8 hours and 31 minutes also. You can ask me any time of the day and I'll be within 10 minutes.
People are going to be, when this episode goes live, because obviously we're recording it a couple weeks before it's going to go live, but people are going to be like, he is wrong. He is wrong.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's
in podcast world, it is the 5th of March right now. So that's funny that that. I love that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's so many things that by going in, and I'm not going to preface this again the rest of the time, but I'm not talking about the people who kill big deer in October. I have nothing to tell those people because they're already killing big deer, right? So when I just exclude them from everything I'm about to say, those people already kill big deer, so
mm-hmm.
they don't need to listen to what I'm talking about, and they're killing in October. Damian Riffle kills a giant deer in his particular moon phase in October, in the middle of October every year, like every year but one. So it can be done. It's just not high percentage for what we're discussing.
Yep.
And of course I derailed myself just then, and I forgot where I was going. But
no, you're good.
So many things that you can do wrong in October, right? So guys going to hunt in October when they're just going to hunt, you're burning your stands, you're educating does, you're educating yearling bucks, you're educating everything in the woods about what you had planned. And you'll notice if you hunt hard the first week and a half of October, you'll see deer the first night in Illinois anyway. You'll see deer the first night. And then the next night you'll see half as many deer. And the night after that you see 25% as many deer. And then after that you see 10. And then all of a sudden, now the only deer you see is that one little basket rack that's just lives right under your tree.
Yep.
And everything else is like, well, this field was full 2 nights ago. Yeah, not anymore. You've educated them. They know what's happening.
Yeah. And you're scratching your head like, why are they not there?
Yeah. And that's why guys stop. They're like, well, I'm moving on to something else. So
Yep.
That's why, to me, November, if someone is transitioning, they need to transition to hunting in November and only November.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not saying don't hunt Halloween. God, lots of big deer killed on Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
But if you have to choose, that first week of November, in my personal opinion, is the best, right?
Yep.
Part of that is because if I ever have to hunt into the second week of November, I've burnt some stands.
Exactly.
And that percentage thing
Yep.
is getting lower and lower, right?
What would you say is like your hunting style for whitetails? Like, are you like a run and gun guy, mobile guy, or, are you kind of like a set stand guy? Like, what would be your style?
So there's a mix between. I'm not a saddle hunter. I couldn't say that, not that there's anything wrong with it, simply because I've never saddle hunted. I see some really weird stuff about it that I don't like. I also see some great advantages to it. Small trees, that types of stuff.
Yep.
But I don't do that. I don't carry around a 2.5 pound stand with holes drilled in it. Right. I still hunt, and those are cool. They're that's fine. It's certainly not a dog for that, but I don't do that. I have particular sets. And I've started hunting out a ladder stand quite a bit, and I know that that's not a big buck thing. Like, people, I bet there's people out there right now that I just lost all credibility. And it doesn't matter how many big deer that I've killed, they would say, "Oh, this guy hunts out a ladder stand."
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't kill everything out of ladder stands. As a matter of fact, I normally kill them out of a hang. But I have ladder stands up that I use specifically. And I move them about every 2 years, or every time I learn something new that causes me to want to move it.
Yep.
But I also am all about moving into an area. If it's time to get into an area and I don't have a stand there, I will put a stand there and hunt it.
Okay.
So it's not like I put all my stands up in August and I never put another stand up. That is the farthest thing then that we can get to.
Yep.
Do I have the tree that I'm going to pick, that I think I'm going to kill a deer out of next year already picked out with a stand in it? Yes, I do.
Mm-hmm.
I put it in there after I killed my deer in November this year. So I could still be in Illinois. I put up the stand, I trimmed the lane, and then when I got home, I thought to myself, I think I need to be on the other side of that draw.
Yeah.
And that's that common thing that everybody, when they're trying to put up a deer stand, they just wander around for about 45 minutes, deciding why all the trees are bad.
It's brutal, dude. Like, you get so granular with it. Like, man, that tree's only got like 13 limbs. Like, I need something with like 20 or better limbs, and it's like,
yeah,
what are you doing? Just put the stand up.
Yeah, this one's in the perfect spot, but it's leaning a little forward. How about that one? Well, it's not in the perfect spot, but boy, it's really got good limbs to hide behind. Yeah, that's. I don't know how guys that put up their stand and take down their stand every single day do it, or every single time they hunt, because I'd never get to stand in the tree. I'd be too busy looking around and deciding, and always be late. And then have to hurry and put it up.
That makes a lot of sense, because last year I went, and just in Michigan wise, like, I went almost exclusively all mobile, like where I took a stand in on my back, hung it, sat it. I mean, I do have presets that I did sit in, but I will tell you, I struggle with that. Like, when I'm hanging a stand, it's like, what should I go there? Well, the wind, my thermal's there, and like, I don't like the crotch in that tree. It's like one of those things. But I'll tell you, when I went into doing that last year, into like mobile hunting, there were more sets than not that I was like, okay, this is the area I want to be in. Like, I'm not going to sit here for 15 minutes and I pick a tree and I just climb it and see what happens. You know what I mean? And I will tell you, more times than not, I had more deer closer to me when I did that. I don't know if it was just blind luck, or if it was like, I'd always narrow it down to like 2 or 3
because
trees.
You didn't drag your stink all around the whole thing.
Exactly.
Walking back and forth.
Probably
60
is.
yards up and down the trail. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we probably don't need to delve too much deeper into that, but that is a thing. So I will move. I use cheap stands. I still hunt out of beagles, the big dog beagles, those little bitty junk stands. They work great. They're fine. I don't mind them. Now, are they as good as something, one of the high end, ultralight, super high speed stuff? Well, no, they're not near as good as that.
But they get you in the tree.
But man, I can buy 6 of them.
Yep.
Right. So I buy them on clearance and I throw them up in the tree. And something that a lot of people miss about a ladder stand is that when I come over a hill and I got to drop down about 60 feet and hop in the stand, I'm in that stand and settled in under 20 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You go to the tree, you're in the tree, you pull your bow up, you hang your bow, and you sit down.
Mm-hmm.
There's something to be said for that.
Yep.
Because a lot of times, if I get in and sit down quick, I'll have deer on me. Generally, they're small deer, but they come to find out what that was.
Yep.
Especially when you're hunting in November. So.
Yep. And, to further that point as well, I was just on a podcast, the Deer Vein podcast, and he asked me, Anthony, we were talking about like saddles and hang-ons and climbers and stuff like that. And the way I look at all of that stuff, they're just tools in your toolbox. You know what I mean? There's trees for climbers still. I might not do it. I don't use a climber, but there are guys out there that still use climbers, and that's what works for them. Like you using a ladder stand, I'm not going to condone it. They're comfortable as hell. You know what I mean? And like you said, you can get up them in less than a minute and you're good to go, and they're pretty safe. If you put them up right, and they can be relatively pretty safe, but it's just, they're all tools, man. They're all tools for different applications, and that's the way I look at them.
My 2 biggest whitetails were killed out of a sit and climb, and 4 of my bigger whitetails, all of them have been killed out of a sit and climb, an old lone wolf. And like you said, there's a time and a place. Are they noisy getting up in the stand? Well, yeah, but I bet the people who make it would argue with you that no, they're not. You're doing it wrong. Okay.
Right. Yep.
It's just no argument, right? I don't own one gun. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I have, most of them are lost in a boating accident, but I had a lot of guns at one point. So you have different guns to do different things. I have different stands for different situations. I have different bows for different situations.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a great way to put it.
Tools in your toolbox.
Yeah. The guns, that's a great way to put it. You have different calibers for different applications. You know what I mean? Different animals, and that's a great way to put it.
Yeah. I'm not taking a 243 to Alaska.
No, no, you would. Well, if it's the only thing you had, you probably would, but if you're in a pinch, but no, I wouldn't recommend that.
Right.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to make a transition from Illinois to Nebraska here, and I want to ask you a question about, now you're in Nebraska, you're a mule deer hunter and a whitetail hunter, but mule deer might be on the back burner for right now. I want to talk about whitetails first. So coming from Illinois, where you can get hill country, you can get big woods, you can get ag fields, coming from there, going to flatness with hardly any trees, how was that transition for you?
It was a zero. It was a total zero, and mostly because when you ever walk over a hill and go, man, that looks deery.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
that looks really deery in there. I didn't feel like that for the first 3 years that I lived in Nebraska. Like, this doesn't look deery. You don't see deer on the road when you drive at night. Like in Illinois, you better look out. All the gravel roads are gauntlets at dusk.
Yep.
You don't see deer on the roads here. They're just not. It's not a big insurance claim, right? People aren't hitting deer a lot. You might hear about a friend hitting a deer once a year. So the transition was absolutely non-existent because I couldn't get the ground. And I've never been a public land guy. And there's some people that really get it done, and that's awesome. I've hunted public land. I tried when I moved to the state, and there is lots and lots of pressure, and even way more pressure now. I mean, wild amounts of pressure. After, like the hunting public and everybody's given all the publicity to Nebraska. And I feel like if I go to public right now, I'm going to see 4 or 5 cars. So that's not my type of hunting. It's too valuable to me to go and get ruined by something like that.
Yep.
If you can feel what I'm saying there.
For sure.
And some people don't have a choice. My choice was fight hard to find ground. And it took me 9 years to get whitetail ground. No, 8 years. It took me 8 years to get whitetail ground in Nebraska. And it's pretty good, right? It's pretty good. I killed an okay deer off of it. I haven't killed anything that was wild. But I keep gaining a little bit more and more, as I make more friends and meet new people. I pick up a little bit more every year. I still wouldn't say, like, if you asked me if I wanted to bet right now if I'd kill a good deer in Illinois next year, I would bet. If you wanted to bet if I'd kill a whitetail in Nebraska next year, just kill a whitetail that was spoken young. No way. No way
Really?
would I bet that. It's still so hard.
Yep.
It's just not good, right? And are there places in Nebraska? Yeah. Did the general sheds come from Nebraska? Yeah. Did my friend kill? One of my buddies in Nebraska killed a deer. It's called a moody buck. If his 2s didn't have common bases with its 3s, he would have been a new typical world record.
Wow.
So there are big deer here, and the potential is unlimited. The problem is their conservation. They have a 9-day rifle season directly in the center of the rut, and it's a 2-buck state. So that's my whitetail discussion for Nebraska. I don't have much to say about it.
I'm going to try to pull some more out, though. I got a question for you. What was your learning curve? What was the learning curve when that first year when you went into Nebraska and the first year you hunted? I mean, this is different, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is some terrain you've never hunted before, right?
Yes. So Nebraska itself, I had grown up hunting river bottoms and ag land and hardwood timber in Illinois, and it's just so different. When you look at it, and I've mentioned before, it doesn't even look deery. There are deer there; they just kind of materialize out of nowhere. The hardest part was they have weird drainages where I'm from right now, and I'm still having to learn that. They have strange drainages that invasive cedars have taken over, and they have 30-foot walls on each side. So it's like if you took all the water out of the river, right? And that was where you hunted. But all the other trees have been cut off, everything on the flat. So all of the trees are off the edge of this cliff. And inside those cliffs is just a mega swirling, horrible place to hunt. And it's the wildest thing ever. And if you don't wind scout in my part of Nebraska, if you're not wind scouting in the summertime, you're making a mistake. You're just wasting a lot of time. Because what I've found in wind scouting, because you can have a 15 mile an hour sustained west wind, and you can stand in the bottom of one of these deals, and you'll get hit in the back of the neck with wind, and then 2.5 minutes later, it's in your face. The whole time, it just changes all the time, always swirling. And the way to combat that is to find out, because there's wind getting blown into there. It's in all directions, but it's going into there, and there's somewhere that it's coming out. So you have these little cracks, these fingers that go up. And as you walk, it's really strange, you feel like you're in some kind of an Indiana Jones movie or a Die Hard, you flick your lighter open and then all of a sudden the wind hits you and you look up this little tiny draw and all of the scent from this place is getting sucked out that one little spot. And it doesn't matter what kind of tree is there. that's where you have to sit. And I was shocked. The first time it happened, it was like finding gold, because you can sit right there now, and it does not matter what direction the wind is blowing. The wind sucks out of that draw and goes up that little 30-foot wide ditch, and then gets puked out into a pasture.
Yep.
So that was one of the main things, was having to wind scout. I'd never wind scouted before. I'd been hunting the same property for my whole life.
Yep.
And I certainly had to work harder, and I still don't have success in Nebraska with whitetail. I killed one decent whitetail in Nebraska, and I've tried. I've started to get on a couple last year, and then all of a sudden rifle season came. So
no, that's a huge thing to learn though, with that wind scouting, because a lot of people, they don't do that. Not even in the the Midwest, like you said, like Illinois, you didn't wind scout. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't wind scout. Like, it's just
it's because the wind's coming out of the west. It's going to be out of the west.
Right.
It's weird.
And if you have a general understanding of thermals, and I'm gonna just equate it to like Illinois, because you're talking about Illinois, and we were just down there scouting our farm, and if you have a general understanding of thermals, you might be in a draw that you could hunt 5 different places. You know what I mean? And the thermals will stay true. Now, when you're talking about these little gullies and what do they call them up, coulees and stuff like that up in like Canada, that's kind of what I'm picturing, right? Is like a coulee? Is that what you're kind of in?
Yeah, and add invasive cedars. Add 5-foot Christmas tree.
Okay. Yep. So when you're in there, the land is almost, in the wind, is almost like basically telling you have to sit here and that's it, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly right.
And man, I could only imagine how much of a headache that would be, not knowing that. Just going in like, man, this tree looks good right here, good trail by it, and you sit it and you don't see anything, and then why? Why? You ask yourself, why? What the hell? That is a huge...
The answer is evident also. The answer as to why is evident, because as you sit there, the first 5 minutes in, wind hits you on a different side of your face. And then another 5 minutes later, it's on the other side of your face. And as a bow hunter, that is one of the sickest feelings that you can get. And I understand people use scent control, and I understand that it has a positive effect, and I understand about ozonics, and I get all that stuff. I believe that every little bit helps.
Mm-hmm.
That's my short story on that. Every little bit helps. But in the end, they can smell you, right? You can mitigate it, but a deer can smell you. And if the wind is just completely swirling, it doesn't matter what you use.
Yep.
So
I'm with you on that, man. There's guys out there that say they can beat a deer's nose. Me personally, I don't think anybody can. You can use all the activated carbon and all the ozonics and all the everything you want. I don't think you'll ever do it, because
I believe there are things you can do to help.
Yes,
right?
I do believe that. Yep.
If you walk into a greasy diner, you can smell, like if you drive by a Wendy's, they're cooking burgers in there.
100%,
right?
yeah.
So if we can smell strong scents like that, well, they can smell them more too,
Yep.
So I guess, I don't want to spend a ton of time on that though. Gosh, that's been beat to death so much, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has.
Gosh, everybody always wants to argue about that.
Yep. No, I agree. So now, I guess going forward in Nebraska, you've had a couple years under your belt. Like you said, you've struggled a little bit, but are you still picking up on things, and are you to a point now where you're like, man, I can really start being successful now in some of these areas? Because I'm sure you're probably hunting the same farms and figuring things out within those farms. Like, are you finding that and like really starting to see an uptick on your success and really getting more confident with it?
I finally got to the point of sitting on top of the highest hill for a week straight during November, in a truck, right?
Yep.
You just sit there. what are you doing? I'm going to sit here. I'm going to sit here all day. And, you know, you take some trail mix and you just go hang out in your truck with a good pair of glass and watch the deer move, because I couldn't get them figured out. And all of a sudden, and there's no rhyme or reason to what they're doing. They're crossing in strange locations. And unless you had been there for 6 hours and watched that they had done that 3 days in a row, not the same deer, but all of the deer, when they crossed from this timber to that timber, they went out in the middle of nowhere and they crossed over from A to B. And you just go, what in the hell? Who would ever known that? And you can't see that, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm doing is that was one thing. And now I'm really, really concentrating a ton more on my entry. And the faster that I can get in, and the less deep into, because these aren't very wide, right? And when you're there, everything knows you're there. So if I can dip in, get in the stand, and that's transferable information.
Yeah.
That's not Nebraska, but
yep.
I have to consider it more here than I did when I was hunting at the goal. I need to get in. I need to break the woods and come at it from a weird angle and get into a stand and stop and just be there. So maybe that doesn't seem like some big golden nugget that I'm giving anybody right there.
No, it does. But honestly, the golden nugget, I think, is what I feel like a lot of hunters don't take into account, and how crucial it is. And you mentioned it, is glassing from a distance. And we call it gas and glass. There's times, majority of times, like I bet you if you go back in the last 10 years, because for me, my job, I'm a filmer. I film hunts. That's what I do. If you go back to like Casey and I's hunts in the past 10 years of like the ratio of actually on stand time to gas and glassing, it's astounding how much how close those two things would be together, as if you break it down to hours or whatever. Because he brought it to me, like that is one of his biggest things, is like, let's sit from a distance. And it sucks because you're like, well, you're not in a stand, I'm not going to kill anything. But that information you gather in how many hours you sit there is invaluable. It could be the difference.
Do what they do without anything else affecting what they do.
Yes.
It's a very important thing.
100%. And you learn on a rapid pace. You learn so fast because you're seeing things that you would never see before.
Yep. Yeah, I think 3 days, and I would never actually do this, but if I had the balls to do it, I would probably be successful. If I had a 4-day hunt somewhere that I didn't know where I was going, and I could use 2.5 of them in a pickup truck, sitting at the highest spot, just being comfortable and watching everything that happens, I believe that you could have success right away on the 3rd day. Like, you talk about a trail camera, you know what I mean? Talk about trail camera intelligence. This isn't one photo pointed in one direction off one particular tree. This is you, the ultimate predator, looking down in every single direction from daylight till dusk.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you can't beat that kind of intelligence.
No, you can't. And sometimes it's the form of just an observation set. You might be still in the ball game, but way away, that you can see a long way. And that's something in one of my farms here in Michigan. It's all ag land with wooded fence rows and everything. That's something that last year I really started doing more of, is just like, I mean, it sucks, like I said, to be like, I'm not in a stand tonight, but when you sit there for, let's just even say, the last hour of light, or 2 hours of light, there's things that you're going to see and learn, and you'll be like, okay, that makes sense. Why is he doing that? Where's the wind coming from? Start asking yourself all these why things and why he's doing what he's doing. Like I said, it's invaluable. And you go in that next day, and there's a good chance you're going to see him or you're going to kill him. That's what's so cool, and that's the chess match of it. I'm glad you brought that up, because that is something that I don't feel like a lot of people talk about enough. And I think that's a big tool in what, a hunter's arsenal it should be.
Mm-hmm. You brought up the glass, but I'm going to touch on the glass again.
Yeah.
So personally, I believe, and every maker out there has good glass. Most of them have a high end line, and they're all fantastic. And a lot of them come from the exact same place. Personally, for me, if I were getting my first pair of optics again, I would be getting into Vortex, and I'd be getting into the Razor line, buying one time, and understanding after that, because Illinois whitetail hunters they generally don't even take binoculars to the stand, right? You can't see far enough to need them. And a pair of high-end binoculars is crazy what it can do for you. So
agreed.
That would be my advice for a new hunter as well, or somebody trying to get a little bit more.
Yeah, serious. I agree. And glassing from a distance, think about a spotting scope as well, which there's a ton of good spotting scopes out there, but really do your research on a spotting scope and getting a good window mount for a pickup, or a bipod mount or something like that, or a tripod. But speaking of glass, like what do you use in stand, like 9x42s or 10x42s or 10x50s? Like, what is your go-to in stand whitetail glass?
I use 12 power Vortex razors.
Okay.
And that's a lot, right? You don't need the 12 power, but it's because I have the 12 power. I don't use a spotting scope when I mule deer hunt.
Yep.
Those 12 powers, and people can say whatever they want to say, and I don't care, because I got them on the wall to prove it. I spot deer from 1,200 yards away, 1,500 yards away, and you can't count their times, but you can see them. They're big or not big.
Sure.
And I've killed those deer. So I don't use a spotting scope. I use a tripod, and I use 12 power high-end glass.
Yeah, and those get pricey, and I can understand why. It's just, it's again like another tool thing. Like, why would I get like using 12 power in Nebraska, even for whitetails? Like, you're talking about for mule deer, but like you could literally see in probably some of your spots your dog run away for 2 days and stand on a beer can and watch it run for 3. You know what I mean? It's just so flat out there in a lot of areas. So having 12 power, I'm not gonna say, if you have 12 power in the heart of the timber in Illinois, I'm going to be like, well, you're just compensating for something, or something.
Right.
But
yeah, I think if I had to choose, I would choose either the 8 or 10 in the Razor line for the ideal whitetail optic.
Yep.
That's what I would use.
Okay.
But since they are pricey, I buy one, right? I had to buy once, and I just haven't been able to fit that into my budget yet to get that next glass.
Sure.
And these work great. So
sure. And I roll 10x42s like that. That's kind of my whitetail go-to. They're not too big, not too small, and you still got some good magnification, but that's my bow hunting glass. And honestly, I use it for rifle hunts, but I don't do a lot of, I haven't been on a lot of mule deer hunts like you are doing. So I haven't really had to do that. I will say, like I talked about my Michigan farm, next year, my first thing in my budget's going to a spot and scope. I drive around a lot in the mornings, especially in the mornings, because my job can allow it. I drive around a lot after I take my daughter to daycare, and I'll come back and I'll just tool the section and just keep looking, because I can see for a long way. I can see 600-700 yards in some areas, and it'd be really beneficial to have that, and to be able to identify some bucks as well.
Yep.
We're coming up on time here, so I would look at my list of things, and I mean, we didn't even cover half of them, but I feel like what we have is very, very valuable information, and I'm glad I've been able to do this. We might have to do another one, but I guess my last question is for you. If somebody from out of state of Nebraska is coming to Nebraska to whitetail hunt. It's a two-part question, but the first question is like, when should they come and hunt? I think we kind of covered that in November, but if they had 4 or 5 or 6 days of vacation, what days, specific days would you tell them to come hunt? And then the second part of that question is, what are some things that they should know? Let's say 3 things. Like, these are some things that you should really look into when coming here because it's different from where you might be coming from.
Okay, and those are great questions, and I don't think my answers are going to be overly popular, or at least what people are going to want to hear. If you are coming from out of state to hunt whitetails in Nebraska, you need to go to another state. That's the number one thing you need to know.
Okay.
That's my opinion. This is not where you go to kill whitetails. Now, I'm going to adjust your question, okay?
Okay.
I'm going to change your question to mule deer. People want to hunt mule deer in Nebraska. First off, it's too crowded. The public, it's not going to be great for you. But if you decide to still come, the things that you need. So, oh man, I do on my YouTube channel, I do a pack dump every year. And the intention of that is, number one, kind of nostalgic to watch how it changes every year. And number two, if it were to be able to help someone who doesn't know how to mule deer hunt and doesn't have a mentor and did like I did, they had to learn completely on their own. That is a place where they can go and they can see everything that I carry. So it's important. And if you're early season hunting in Nebraska for mule deer, it's a little bit different than whitetail in a sense of scent, because you're going to approach the bedded down deer with intention. You're not going to go, oh, shoot, the wind's wrong, I hope he doesn't come in. That's not how that works. You choose the direction. So something that people overlook are sunscreen and bug spray. I know that doesn't seem like what, but sunscreen and bug spray. I got stuck on the side of a hill one time for about an hour and a half, and I had a short sleeve shirt on. It was warm in the afternoon, and it was 110 degrees, 105 degrees, something like that. And I just fried. But I mean, I'm not leaving, right? Because he's right there.
Right.
I'm going to kill him. I'm not leaving, but I got fried, absolutely fried. So those are the things that I'm going to say. It's you can go and look at those things on my channel, and I can really get into them. People make fun of Westies for wearing gaiters. Gators are a good tool. When it's dry out, you don't need them at all. But
gators are a great tool.
Walking through grass, people give people hell about wearing gators all the time.
Man,
but I made a pair last year, and I really like them.
Yeah, they're a great tool, especially for elk hunting, because you're gonna be wearing hiking boots. You're not gonna be wearing knee highs hiking all the time. So this is basically a knee-high hiking boot, and it's comfortable. And the thing I like about it too is, like, in the morning when it's can be dewy or wet and stuff like that, and your pants don't get wet. You know what I mean? Like that's huge. Also, is not getting your pants wet, because that can be uncomfortable, and your boots wet. That can be uncomfortable all day. But all day. It's exactly, because you're working, you're sweating.
It's never dry.
Yeah, you're sweating and you're going through water, creeks, or something like that. This keeps everything dry. I love your answers. Yep. It's out of the box shit. I really like that, because I can advocate for being stuck on the side of a mountain or a hill or something on a bedded buck, and you cannot move for 6-7 hours a day. Like, it's realistic. It can happen. So I never thought of those two things, to be honest with you.
Well, whatever they are, you have to think about what can stop you from hunting. What is going to ruin my hunt? And how can I mitigate that factor? So if I'm going to glass, or I'm going to go sit in a big bunch of tall grass, I'm going to get ate alive by mosquitoes unless I'm sprayed down,
Yep.
maybe I have a face net. I have no idea. There's all kinds of things, but any hunger stops you, right? Being cold stops you. Being hot stops you. All types of things can stop you. I don't know. There's just so much that you
sure.
need to think about. Allen wrenches, a little tiny set of Allen wrenches. If you're miles from a truck, you have to have Allen wrenches with you. If you're running a back bar and all of a sudden you bump it wrong and now it's just flapping in the wind, and you're planning on shooting an animal at 65 yards, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to solve that problem.
Yep. I agree. So I got one last question. I'm going to force you to answer this. You have to answer it. I'm going to ask you again. You have to answer this. If you're going to Nebraska for whitetails, what days are you picking?
Okay. And that's the same. It doesn't really matter anywhere in the Midwest as long as you're not talking about South. November 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11.
Okay.
Starting with November 1 and decreasing. The golden day is for me when it gets the hottest is always November 7th everywhere I've ever been. Now, has November 6th been really hot before? Well, yeah, sure. So November 5th through November 11th are always my very favorite. But it's funny because everybody says, well, is it the first week or the second week? Well, it's the end of the first week and the beginning of the second
right.
for me.
Yep. I agree with that, man. That November 7th will always be my favorite day. It's the day I killed the biggest deer in my life and had the best week of my life. So that's definitely a hot day for me as well.
Let me give a separate answer because Nebraska is different than most states. It opens September 1st. So the first 5 days of September is also cool.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to be out here a couple days before season and scout.
I like that.
Do that from afar glassing. There's
Yep.
that's a great time of the year to hunt. Guys in Illinois miss out, because they don't get to shoot deer in early September.
Yep.
They're just like docile. They do the same thing every day. It's September 1 through September 5 is a pretty wild time to hunt.
I like that answer. It is. I've been in Wyoming and hunted that time, and it's a great time to be there, man. It really is. So, well, cool, man. We're up on time here. We're into this an hour, and I can't thank you enough for coming on and doing this. But before we do sign off, I do want you to send everybody, to your social media channels and YouTube channel and everything, just so they can kind of track what you're doing. And, somebody might have taken something from this and they really want to know more. So where can you direct them?
I'm go as Buck Collector Clay. That's what all my channels are called. So YouTube, Instagram, all those things. Go Wild. Really liking that new app. So anything on there, it's all Buck Collector Clay. It's most of it's a little bit of goofy stuff. It's not very good, but I don't know. Maybe some people can find it informative. Maybe it's entertaining. Who knows?
I love it, man. Well, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it, and you have the good rest of your evening.
Yeah, we'll have to do a part 2 sometime.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely on board with that, and we'll get that in the books.
Okay, bud. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Thank you, Clay. All right, and there you have it. Clay Thurman, thank you very much for coming on and recording with me, man. I appreciate it. Thank you guys, everybody out there. I say it every week for all the support and all the downloads. If you guys can please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating and put a little written word comment in there. That'd be greatly appreciated. So with that being said, we will be right here. No, I think I'm going to drop an episode tomorrow. So you will hear tomorrow's episode as well. So thank you guys very much, and we'll talk to you later.